I don't know what's going on with the camera. What's up? It's BD. Today I am talking about how big you should get. But first, I have a Patreon if you want to support the cause. There might be coaching spots open, I'm not sure. Peak Male Physique for male enhancement aids that are not needed but can help. LeviathanSups.com for pre-ordering mine and Doc Hank supplements that are adequately dosed and cost effective. So let's get into it. So that question comes up a lot. How big should you get? Really, it depends. Okay. If you followed me for at least 3 months, you would know I made a video on the preferred penis size, scientifically speaking. Basically, there's a research study with, I think, 83 women who were given models to demonstrate their preferred size. It came out to be 6¼ long and 5 inches around on average. So that is above average. That's about 15% of the male population would be that size or bigger. So it's not uncommon, but again, it is statistically significant. It would be safe to say that size would satisfy 90% of women. 5% it would actually be too big for, and another 5% would desire larger due to their own vaginal depth and their own preferences. And this is going to predominantly be talking about female preference. I'm a straight guy. I don't know much about male preference, so apologies in advance. But I would assume most of this size preference lines up with men. So the bottom line is, if you only care about pleasing women and not so much about impressing, then you want to be between 6¼ and 5 inches. You can still do it smaller with relative ease. The main organ or zone for female sensation is the clitoris. If you know how to grind it while you're penetrating, you're going to make them very happy no matter what size there is. And there's also an argument to say, if you are shorter than, say, 5 inches, if you know how to grind and your penis is hitting that G spot while you're having sex, then it's going to be very satisfying for your partner. It all comes down to how you use your tool rather than its size. However, everyone has a preference. I'm assuming some of you guys enjoy huge tits, others prefer little ones. So, women are the same way. We can't judge them for having a preference because we all have preferences. If you are a chubbier guy, you probably want to be a little bit longer than what I said. All the sizes I'm going to state today are bone pressed, mainly because if you are sufficiently lean, your fat pad's not really going to make much of a difference because fat does compress, and that you do want to have a little bit of a fat pad because, one, it keeps the vibrations from being unpleasant for both of you, and two, that allows you to actually grind against the clitoris with a more soft and pliable padding, so to speak. But yeah, if you're chubbier than that, you probably want to be 6¾ instead of 6¼ The girth stays the same. But I recommend everyone try to get in best shape. You're going to last much longer in bed. The better cardiovascular health you are in. Doesn't really matter what your body fat is, but if you're able to run a mile or two without dying, you are in pretty good shape. Also, 6¼ by 5 is a very good size for daily sex. The bigger you get, the more time your partner will need to recuperate from your size. Now, I know many of you guys just don't want to satisfy but impress. Just remember, the bigger you get, the more complications you can have during sex. But the safe target for big but not obscene would be 7½ by 5½. This would put you in the 99.93 percentile. That means out of 1,000 guys, only 7 guys would be your size or larger. So yeah, there is a good chance no woman will meet a guy your size if you're both 7½ long, 5½ in girth. You will still be able to fit into condoms off the shelves in the United States. If you're over 5¾ in girth, you're gonna have issues finding condoms in the United States. Some stupid rule with the FDA, they don't want to have too big of condoms because then that'll lead to unwanted pregnancies because guys buy shit off their egos instead of what they actually are. But that's besides the point. A good reference for this size would be the adult performer Johnny Sins. He's about this size. He is exceptionally lean though, so it looks decently bigger than what he actually is. I'm acting like 7½ inches. It's not long. It is pretty long. But again, it's not like the 9 inches that you hear in porn. I think he says he's 8 by 6, but He's not, but he's not the worst exaggerator I've seen, okay? It's just part of the business. So yeah, if you are, you know, a normal in shape dude, so like not chubby, but not shredded, then your penis is going to look a little smaller. On top of that, your own body size is going to look different. 7.5 inches on me, for example, is going to look a decent bit smaller than Johnny, just because Johnny is a little shorter than me, but he also carries probably about 30 less pounds than me. I'm not saying like I'm a gigantic dude, but I have a wide frame. So anyway, that's besides the point. And if you're shorter than Johnny, 7.5 inches is going to look even bigger, because it's all about proportions. And I'll get into it in another video about how you should not demote, or you should not put too much value on your perceived size, but your actual size for your own mental health. Any size after 7.5 by 5.5 would be limiting depth of penetration, therefore limiting stimulation of the clitoris. This is one of the issues that a lot of big guys don't realize they have, is that since they can't go all the way in, they are not stimulating the clitoris, and therefore it's just uncomfortable. It doesn't feel like much sensationally other than stretching for their partner. The clit is like the key to female orgasms, whether it be vaginal or just clitoral, okay? The vast majority of women cannot orgasm without clitoral stimulation. So if you can't find the clit, learn where it is. It's not that hard to find once you know what to look for. If you are a single man, I would recommend not getting any larger than this, as it can start to scare away some partners, and you do not want to limit yourself if, one, you're just hooking up, and two, you don't want to scare away your potential life partner for being too big to start. And again, 7.5 by 5.5 is plenty big. If you want to get bigger than that, you want to make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. You do not want to be doing it because you think you are small. You want to do it because you want to see what you can accomplish, for example, or you have a size fetish. But understand that fetishes can complicate sex. You need a partner that is okay with that fetish. Now, once you have a long-term partner, then I would feel like it's okay to get as bigger than 7.5 by 5.5. Now, obviously, there will be wiggle room. I'll talk more into it in a second. Your max size should be whatever your partner can comfortably handle. Surprisingly enough, your partner will adapt as you grow with them. That's why I'm like, wait until you have a long-term partner, and then you can continue to get bigger if you so desire. But I would highly recommend you talk it over with them. Say, hey, I'm going to try to enlarge my penis. As weird as it sounds, yes, we say do PE just for yourself and not to impress anyone, but the circumstances are a little different here. They are going to have to handle that added mass. So it's more for your pleasure in their detriment if they're not enjoying it. So if you're going to be a good partner, I would make sure they know this is what they're in for. Me and my wife have a compromise that I can continue to get bigger, but once it starts hurting her in sex, or it starts limiting positions that she enjoys, then we're done, or I'm done, which is fine. Because again, she's my wife. I should be trying to please her instead of myself all the time, right? And speaking from experience, I have grown 1.5 inches in length and 1 inch in girth since I have taken my wife's virginity 6-7 years ago. She handles it just fine. There's still, basically, I was big to begin with. I was 7.5 by 5.5 when we first hooked up. That's when we really had issues, but she got accustomed to me. And then the only thing that we still can't really do is doggy, but that has more of an issue to do with my slight upwards curve in her vaginal shape. And essentially, it just lets me line up and hit her right in the bladder. So it's not comfortable for her. And honestly, hot take, but doggy is really boring because all you're doing is just standing there and not much is going on, like, stimulus-wise for me. Personally, I do not recommend going any larger than 10 inches by 7 inches around. First of all, I don't think I've ever seen it done on the forums. People say, yeah, I grew this big, but there's never pictures to really show it. If so, they're pumped up messes and it doesn't count. Even if you have a long-term partner, if we're being pragmatic, there's a good chance you guys may not last together. The last thing you want to be is have a penis too big for 90% of women. Second, even if your partner, there's a good chance your partner will tap out before you can even hit this size. And finally, it is going to take a long time to get that big. That is a lot of mass. There's a good chance no man is that long and that wide at the same time without having some kind of, say, condition that caused it. It's not going to be genetically occurring. Basically, you do not want your penis to become an obsession, like me, unfortunately. Your penis only takes up 1 to 2% of your body. It should not take up more than 1 to 2% of your thought process if we're thinking about this rationally. But I get, as a society in general, we put a lot of value in penis size. So do what's right for you, but don't get carried away is what I'm saying. 6.5 or 6.25 by 5.25 is plenty. I even think I said too much. So 6.25 and 5 inches around is plenty for most women. You should not feel like you need to be the biggest guy in the room unless you, well, let me rephrase. There is no like logical reason to want to be the biggest guy in the room. You should not feel compelled to be that way. But I get it, I'm hyper competitive, so that's one of the reasons why I push to be as big as I am. But that's not necessarily for the right reasons. It's more of my own insecurity of not being enough than it is for my own enjoyment. Now it's mostly for my own enjoyment and seeing what's actually possible. But beforehand, it was more like, oh God, there's a 0.2% chance someone is bigger than me on my university campus. I need to get bigger. That's not a healthy way to go about this. You don't have to be the biggest. You just need to be adequate. And again, being too big can cause issues. I might make just a video on all the issues of being too big. First and foremost, your size is your choice. But you need to understand that your size is literally something you will share with someone else. So you need to keep your partner in mind when you are deciding on how big to get. Another thing I should bring up, if you are into a certain build of woman, say full figure, then you probably want to be a little longer just because they have a little more cushion and then they can technically handle more. This is getting into little gross territories. And then if you're into more petite women, then you probably want to stay within the range I talked about, if not a little smaller. Just because there's less cushion and then therefore you can penetrate slightly farther. But that's either here or there. Vaginal depth is really what matters, not so much how much weight the women you're into are carrying, or men. But yeah, I'm sorry to ramble at this point. Do what you want, just understand the consequences is really what I'm saying, okay? Cool. This is BD signing off.